Hi guys, welcome back to Fragments of a Simple Life. For every video I make is super simple. I am back with America's Scariest Places, haunted, creepy, and abandoned. We are getting very, very close to Halloween. I don't know when you'll watch this video, but for me, at the time of recording, Halloween is tomorrow. So I thought we could read some more stories together while we have a chance. I said this in a previous video, but I'm sure I won't finish all of the magazine stories before Halloween. Like I said, tomorrow from this magazine and my other magazine that I have that's about the world's scariest places. But you know, I can always read more later if you guys like these magazines. Oh, I turned right to one that we haven't read yet. At the top, you can see the post-its. The post-its just mean that it's a story I've already read. So those are the ones I skip. But I turned right to a page that I have not read before. So let's read this together. It says, Where Authors Linger. This is from the Eerie Exhibitions chapter of this magazine, because this magazine has chapters. Number 1, The Black Shadow of Edgar Allan Poe. Here we have a little caption that says, The old stone house, pictured here, is the oldest residential building still standing in Richmond, Virginia. It has an enchanted garden, and in the rear, inspired by the Poe's poem, enchanted garden in the rear, inspired by Poe's poem, To One in Paradise. It's pretty cute. It says, in his chilling 1884 short story, sorry, I can't see the reading, premature burial. Literally, like, the writing is white, sorry guys, and then this little statue is right, and I could not see it at all. Okay. In the short story, The Premature Burial, Edgar Allan Poe's narrator struggles with a phobia of being buried alive. Well, yeah. The boundaries which divide life from death are at best shadowy and vague. Who shall say where the one ends and where the other begins? Apparently, that boundary is located at the Edgar Allan Poe Museum, an old stone house blocks away from Poe's first home in Richmond, Virginia. It's the place where the writer's ghost is said to drift amid what is billed as the world's largest collection of Poe memorabilia. It says ephemera and artifacts, along with 2 cats named Edgar and Pluto, after the felines in his story, The Black Cat. Poe's spirit is said to appear as a black shadow, wandering in the courtyard and lingering over 2 particular items: a walking stick that the author used in his later years before his death under mysterious circumstances in 1849, and his wife Virginia's hand mirror. Oh, that's kind of depressing. Okay, here we have number 2, and it says, Mark Twain's cigar smoke lingers. The smell of cigar smoke still drifts through the billiard room of the Mark Twain house, where the author once relaxed during breaks from writing some of his greatest works, including The Adventures of Tom Sawyer and Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. To us, the house had a heart and a soul and eyes to see us with. Twain, whose real name was Samuel Clemens, once wrote of the 11,500 square foot, 25-room home in Hartford, Connecticut, built as his dream house in 1874, but whose high construction costs and upkeep contributed to the author's financial problems, forcing the family to move to Europe. Wow, I didn't know that. I never thought that someone who was so famous would have money problems. Anyways, I guess it happens. Along with Twain, who died in 1910, the house is said to be haunted by the spirit of Twain's oldest daughter, Susie, a gifted writer who died at the age of 24 of spinal meningitis, and of the author's widow, Olivia, who could never afford to return to live in the beloved house. Some also believe the family maid and butler also appear, continuing to tend to them in the afterlife. I would hope when you pass away that you don't have to keep doing your job as a butler. I'm just saying. William Faulkner sits at his writing desk. The spirit of the author of The Sound and the Fury and As I Lay Dying has been seen and smelled puffing on a pipe while sitting on his old writing desk in Faulkner House Books in New Orleans. William Faulkner penned his first novel, Soldier's Pay, while living in the French Quarter House in the 1920s. Now a little two-room bookstore calling itself a sanctuary for fine literature and rare editions with tomes both by Faulkner and other Southern authors. The shop is located down an alley off Jackson Square in the building where the author rented a room after moving to New Orleans from his native Mississippi. When not hard at work in the shop, Faulkner, who died in Mississippi in 1962, is said to make an inappropriate caresses of young women passing by. Gosh, I'd hope not. I don't want to be touched by a ghost in an inappropriate way. But I'm also not a young woman anymore, so. Number 4. C. Ernest Hemingway, his ex, and a six-toed cat. Look at the cat. Ew. Listen for the tap-tap of the Papa's typewriter in the French colonial-style home in Key West, Florida, where in 1930s, the author wrote The Snows of Kilimanjaro, To Have and Have Not, and Islands in the Stream. Ernest Hemingway is also said to wave from his window on the second-story veranda of Hemingway's house, which was opened as a museum in 1964, 3 years after the Nobel Prize winner's death. His second wife, Pauline, pictured below, that's her, who continued living in the house after he deserted her in 1939, yikes, is also known to make an appearance, puffing on cigarettes in the garden and leaving the butts on the ground. But the most popular spirit is that of a six-toed cat Hemingway had adopted from a sailor. Dozens of living polydactyl cats still scurry about the grounds. They're said to be descendants of the original, who is seen in the pet cemetery. Look at it. The cat really has 6 toes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It really does. That's really weird. Okay. I got my Post-its per usual, you guys. And I'm going to put this here so we don't read it again. This time I'm going to kind of flip through the pages. We have the Pharmacy Museum. We haven't done that, but let's find something else. What is that? I don't know how to pronounce the U when it has the little 2 lines above it, but Mutter, I'm sure that's not how you say it, Museum in Philadelphia. Ooh, let's read this one. The Glore Psychiatric Museum in St. Joseph's, Missouri, a painful reminder of cruel and unusual mental treatment. Have we read about this in the other one? I can't remember. It says ghost hunters have experienced cold spots, the feeling of being followed, seeing darting shadows, and hearing knocking on a locked door and a child saying, quote, "Help me." George Glore was a history buff. Given that he worked for decades for the Missouri Department of Mental Health, his interest in the past naturally turned to the diseases of the mind and how they were treated and mistreated. In 1966, to mark Mental Health Awareness Week, Glore built life-size replicas of treatment devices, some of them positively medieval, dating back to the 16th century. As Glore said, "We really can't have a good appreciation of the strides we've made if we don't look at the atrocities of the past." He recreated such awful devices as the bath of surprise that plunged patients suddenly into ice water, The coffin-shaped lunatic box that confined patients standing up, and the tranquilizer chair with a built-in toilet that subdued patients with restraints to the feet and hands and the hood over their head. That the tranquilizer chair was invented by no less than Benjamin Rush, a signer of the Declaration of Independence and the father of American psychiatry in the early 19th century, speaks volumes to how far the field has come. That's crazy and really, really gross. Over the years, these macabre models became centerpieces of the Glore Psychiatric Museum, which depicts the 130-year history of the adjacent State Lunatic Asylum Number 2, renamed St. Joseph's State Hospital. The museum also contains instruments used to conduct lobotomies, a full-size formerly operational morgue room, old staff uniforms, artwork by the mentally ill, a display of objects swallowed by patients, and dioramas, including one exhibit about a man who spent 72 years as a psychiatric patient at St. Joseph's. That's like his whole life. Wow. As for those patients who never checked out, Glore is said to be teeming with spirits. YouTube has thousands of videos of purported paranormal activity at the museum, with visitors reporting rocking chairs that sway on their own, books that sail off to the gift shop shelves, strange smells, that's the worst one to me, and blinking lights. So, if you're looking for something to watch, Glore Psychiatric Museum, they said there's lots on YouTube about that place. I don't know if I'd want to be the person that like makes dioramas of scary stuff. Ooh, 5 of the most haunted items at the Smithsonian. Let's read this one. Sounds interesting. The little caption says, Smithsonian staffers and volunteers talked about their scary encounters in a Spooked at the Smithsonian episode of the Side Door podcast released in 2022. Again, another thing that you guys can go listen to. Okay, number 1 is the building. Okay, so one of the most haunted items at the Smithsonian is the whole entire building. Okay, let's read about it. A real-life night at the museum at the Smithsonian may introduce visitors to its lesser-known collection, ghosts. The first spectral visitor on record dates back to 1900, when a night watchman bumped into Joseph Henry, the first secretary of the Smithsonian and, at the time, very much dead for the past 22 years. Old Henry had a flair for the dramatic, with his spirit appearing as a shadow that morphed in and out of his own statue, erected after his death. Since then, there have been a number of ghost sightings, though most are kept quietly under wraps. The Smithsonian is dedicated, after all, to more scholarly pursuits. A lot of staff have had some kind of weird experiences. Molly Horrocks, collections manager at the National Museum of American History, told Smithsonian Magazine. And she should know. When she came to work early one day, she saw a ghost of a man in a 1940s era military jacket staring at her from a stairwell that led to where else? The World War II exhibit. You know, I think I'd have to get a different job. Just saying. Okay, number 2's up here. I hope you guys can see that. It's a mummified cat head. Worshipped by the ancient Egyptians, cats got send-offs to their afterlife in great style, as shown by the mummified cat in the National Museum of Natural History. The linen-wrapped head sits atop of a cylindrical body, and x-rays confirm it's the real deal. The cat's skull, inside the head, and cat bones are located throughout the body. But there's some indication this cat didn't make it to its final destination, as workers have seen a ghostly feline wandering the halls at night. It says at the night, but I think that might be like a typo. Number 3, Mary Todd Lincoln's dress. Well, I mean, it kind of looks like there's a ghost wearing it. It kind of looks creepy, like a headless woman, an armless woman, because not like a whole mannequin. Anyways, I digress. African American dressmaker Elizabeth Keckley believed to have created Mary Lincoln Todd's purple velvet skirt and daytime bodice on display at the National Museum of American History. But after her husband, President Abraham Lincoln, was assassinated in 1865, Mary would never step out again in such style, remaining in widow's clothes until her death in 1882. Many who gaze at the dress are struck first by its beauty and craftsmanship, but then are overwhelmed with sudden and surprising sadness. Security guards have reported hearing muffled weeping coming from inside the case. Sometimes an older woman with a sad face is seen gliding across the museum floor wearing the dress. No, thank you. Number 5, the Black Aggie. I think I'm saying it right. Aggie. The name of the statue at the grave of General Felix Agis. Oh, Agnes. Is it Augie then? I don't know, guys. In Druid Ridge Cemetery in Maryland. The Black Aggie or Augie once was a sensation among teens, testing the myth that sitting on its lap at midnight brought instant death, or that staring into the statue's eyes would make them open and glow red. So many thrill seekers broke into the cemetery, vandalizing the grounds, that officials finally donated the Black Aggie or Augie to the Smithsonian American Art Museum with no noted mythological mishaps. Augie or Aggie has since been moved to a courtyard behind the Dolly Madison House on Lafayette Square, while a bare pedestal remains at the former spot in the cemetery. I wonder why it got such like a rap that teens would break in. Maybe just because it's creepy, because it is kind of a creepy statue. I don't know. Okay, the Hope Diamond, number 5. The world's most famous diamond, right here, is also said to be the most cursed. One of the most popular exhibits in the National Museum of Natural History, the stone is a 45-carat diamond extracted in the 17th century from a mine in India. Radiating a stunning blue color from trace amounts of bourbon, the Hope Diamond got its reputation due to terrible fates suffered by the many people who owned it or had been close to it. Oh no. Oh, including was King Louis and his wife Marie Antoinette, who were both beheaded, though the French Revolution certainly had more to do with food shortages and class division in society than the diamond. It was donated to the Smithsonian by jeweler Harry Winston in 1958. I would want to donate it too, because I wouldn't want the responsibility of it anymore. It's just too big. Too much history. It's really pretty though. It's weird that it shines blue. The Ghosts of Wars, Chapter 4. I've never flipped to like the beginning. Gettysburg Battlefield. No. Bloody Vessels. There's so many where there's like multiple of one kind of thing. Okay. Let's read about Fort Mifflin in Philadelphia. The women wail from the beyond over their lost men. Oh, this is sad. Okay. Up here, the caption says visitors report hearing the voices of sailors and soldiers from different eras as the ghosts warm themselves by invisible fire with a pungent odor of smoke. Could you imagine going down there and smelling smoke, but nothing has been lit for so long? During the Revolutionary War, the island fortress of Fort Mifflin, south of Philadelphia, suffered the worst bombardment of any installation in the fledgling Union. About 450 American soldiers struggled to hold off thousands of British troops and 250 ships pummeling them with cannonballs. After days of relentless waves of attacks, in November 1777, the Americans finally evacuated, but they managed to stymie the British on the Delaware River, buying the Continental Army valuable time to reposition troops to Valley Forge. That heroism on Mud Island's Fort Mifflin came at a horrible cost. 250 of those 450 men were killed or wounded. It was only about a year later that the haunting started at the ravaged fort. In 1778, there was the first report of female voices wailing over the loss of their men, even though no women were on the island. The cries have echoed through the centuries until modern times. The screams of one woman coming from the direction of the old officers' quarters were so loud that police were called to the fort only to find the building empty. Other spirits are said to be the fearless man with the sad-looking man who wander around the fort, while another, known as Lamplighter, carries an oil lamp. After Revolutionary War, the fort was built and later used during the Civil War as a prison. The Army decommissioned most of the fort in 1962, though one section is still used by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, establishing the fort as the oldest still in use. The ghostly population has grown lonely, and not all of them are sinister. One has been known to appear in period clothing and even lead tours when no living guides are on duty. Spectral children and their pet dogs can be heard. Visitors have spotted strange shadows and orbs that look like burning eyes, and some claim they've seen an entire ghost ship dock at the fort. I would love to see a picture of that. Wouldn't that be crazy? A whole entire ghost ship? Why don't people get pictures of these things? The Alamo, Little Bighorn, soldiers who don't rest easily. Chapter 5, Spooky Churches and Graveyards. Prayers go unanswered in these houses of worships and cemeteries. This says, what is this? A grave bell at Georgia's Bonaventure Cemetery was connected via a string to the fingers of a buried person. If the bell rang, staff would rush to dig up the coffin and save the occupant. So gross. I have heard of that before. We read this one already. Let's read this one right here. Bonaventure Cemetery in Savannah, Georgia. A little girl weeps in a boneyard made famous by a bestseller. At the Pulaski House Hotel, sorry, I can't read it. Oh, lit the Gracie Watson. What? Oh, little. I really can't read it. Sorry, guys. Little Gracie Watson was always a delightful presence. And when the innkeeper's sweet daughter died at the age of 6 of pneumonia shortly before Easter in 1989, her loss saddened the city, as she was remembered by the Savannah Morning News as a gentle favorite amongst guests. Gracie's parents, W.J. and Frances Watson, commissioned a statue of Gracie for her grave in Bonaventure Cemetery in Savannah, Georgia, where visitors leave flowers, cards, and toys and swear they can sense and sometimes see the spirit of the girl. It seems that some have experienced hearing the sounds of a female crying, according to Condé Nast Traveler, and sense a high level of sadness in the air. Many have observed the statue and have actually observed tears that resemble blood falling from the eyes of the statue. See? No. I thought it was just a creepy statue of a little girl, but it just got worse. The Spanish mosque covering the cemetery overlooking the Wilmington River is also famous for another monument. For a half a century, a bronze sculpture of a sad young girl, this one right here, I'm guessing, carrying bowls in each hand, once sat quietly in this rural bluff-top graveyard, almost completely unknown, until a photo of it appeared on the cover of the 1994 bestseller Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. Known as Bird Girl, she's 50 inches tall, which is what, like a little more than 4 feet or something like that? That's a big statue. In a simple dress with her head tilted to the left, commissioned not as a grave marker but as a garden sculpture, with bowls filled with birdseed that stood next to a family plot. Savannah photographer Jackie Lee's moody images graces what is considered one of the most famous book covers of all time. So many people flocked to the cemetery to see Bird Girl that the sculpture was finally removed and placed on display in Savannah's Telfair museums. So people wanted to go see it so badly that they actually had to take it out. It's very interesting. Okay, let's keep going. Let's read about the San Fernando Cathedral. It's a really beautiful building, but it definitely looks like somewhere where you would hunt for ghosts. It says a white horse and spirits with angry faces have been spotted at this historic site. The caption says, there's a marble tomb in the cathedral with a plaque that states it is the final resting place of Davy Crockett, Jim Bowie, William B. Travis, and other defenders of the Alamo. Wow. Okay, San Antonio is famous for the Alamo, but there's another site that holds a particular appeal for supernatural sightseers, San Fernando Cathedral. The oldest church in Texas, San Fernando has been the site of numerous spectral encounters, shadowy figures flitting through the aisles after dark, a black-robed figure glimpsed standing motionless by the altar, strange orbs of light appearing in tourist snapshots, and late at night, people claim they've seen an eerie sight outside the cathedral, a ghostly white horse galloping across the plaza. That would be a trip to see. That would be so insane. The Alamo is only a short walk away, and legend has it that the remains of some of those who died defending the site were inferred at San Fernando. In 1936, renovation of the cathedral turned up bones and military uniforms in an area near the altar. Do the spirits of the brave Texian army linger at their final resting place? They are not the only bodies laid to rest in the cathedral. San Fernando was built by Canary Island settlers in 1738, and the custom then was to bury the dead in the church, literally in the walls, for the poorer citizens, or under the floor for the town's bigwigs. No wonder some people report angry faces appearing from the stonework at night. Ew. There's dead people in the walls and in the floor, not just like in a cemetery around back. That makes me like swallow hard. Yuck. And that white horse, the church was the site of a 1749 ceremony to ratify a peace treaty between Apache tribal members and the townsfolk. The Apache buried their weapons in the front plaza, literally burying the hatchet. Wow, that's crazy. And then sacrificed a horse. The one they picked, in keeping with traditions, was as white as snow. I wonder if someone saw a like a ghost horse for the first time and then learned that story afterwards. Because like if you take a tour and you learn something about the place and then you see it, it's kind of like, are you being mentally and emotionally like influenced? Let's find at least one more story. But yeah, if you see it first, maybe you feel a little, you know, like it could be more likely to be real. I don't know. That's just my opinion. Um, American vampires. Okay, let's read these 2 pages because there's 4 of them, and then I think that's a good place to stop. Stopping on vampires is a pretty good place to stop for Halloween. Legend has it that the third floor of the Ursuline Convent was sealed off, the shutters on the windows nailed down with hardware blessed by a pope. Okay, creepy. Number 1, Louisiana's Casket Girls. When the young French women and girls arrived in New Orleans aboard ships in the 17th century, they appeared close to, or perhaps one step beyond, death. They were pale and gaunt, and some coughed blood. These were the Casket Girls, named after their little carry-on luggage boxes known as a casquette in French, or casket. I don't know if I'm saying that. Casquette? Casquette? I don't know. They came to New Orleans because the city needed wives for the colonialists, and France wanted to get rid of its undesirables. Jesus. Many of the girls were said to be orphans and prostitutes. Local lore says some of them were also vampires, residing in Ursuline Convent by day and performing deadly deeds at night. They were blamed for everything from crop failures to a rash of disappearing hand mirrors. The rumor probably started because of their scary appearance as they stumbled off the boats, and a result of malnutrition during the long voyage and the symptoms of tuberculosis. Isn't that crazy? Like, it couldn't be that they're just, sick. That couldn't be it. It had to be that they were vampires. No mercy in Rhode Island. After 19-year-old Mercy Brown Below died in the winter of 1892, the people of Exeter, Rhode Island, I'm hoping I'm saying that right, suspected she may have been a vampire who had caused the outbreak of consumption, aka tuberculosis, that killed many people, including her mother and sister. The only way to be sure was to dig up her corpse from Baptist Church Cemetery and go and do a thorough inspection for signs of vampirism. Sure enough, even after spending time in a coffin, her body had barely decomposed. Her face was flushed, her blood was still filled, her heart still filled her heart and veins, and following the folks remedied of the time, her liver and heart were burned. They thought that would solve it. And the ashes went into a potion given to her brother who had also fallen ill. Edwin died anyways. Researchers now believe that Mercy's condition was due to her body being kept frozen in an above ground crypt while waiting for the hard ground to thaw for burial. So it preserved her. So the weather preserved her, and they thought that meant that she was a vampire because she looked like she was not totally dead when they dug her up. Bizarre. And again, a woman being blamed for tuberculosis or consumption. A Transylvanian in Colorado. The pale, skinny man suspected of being a vampire came, naturally, from Transylvania, only to die in Colorado in the 1918 flu epidemic. A miner of modest means, Theodore Fedor Glava, I think it says. Sorry guys, I should have worn my glasses. Yeah, Glava was buried among the paupers in a cemetery in Lafayette, Colorado, with a humble marker inscribed with some words in Roman, but the locals have always feared that Glava from the land of Vlad the Impaler was not resting as peacefully as he should, so they dug him up. Here we go again. They were horrified to find blood in his mouth and fingernails that had grown since his burial. Although these are now known as common features of decaying corpses. Isn't it that, and this sounds gross, but isn't it, it's not that your nails grow out, it's that your skin pulls back when you die? I think that's true. Anyways, although these are now known as common features of decaying corpses, the townspeople were certain they had a vampire in their midst and drove a stake through his heart. Local legend states that the stake grew into a tree that now sprouts from his gravesite, and visitors swear they see a ghostly figure prowling the cemetery. I wonder what this says. Should look it up. A Menace in Virginia, number 4. When a railroad tunnel collapsed in Richmond, Virginia, and killed 4 train workers in 1929, witnesses reported seeing a jagged toothed creature covered in blood and draped in human skin running from the scene towards the Hollywood Cemetery. This was the mythical Richmond vampire, whose legend has it exploited the Church Hill Tunnel tragedy, to feast on the victims. The vampire said to have found cover in a family mausoleum of the late bookkeeper W. W. Poole and stays there still, becoming such a menace and generating so much publicity that the corpses of Poole and his wife had to be moved. Here we go again. Some believe the vampire story originated when one of the survivors of the tunnel collapse, a locomotive fireman, staggered away bloodied, badly burned, and dazed. Oh, wow. And then somebody spun the story. Who spun the story? Who spun the story? I think the craziest part of this magazine is the historical part. Like, how sad is it that so many people believe a story that come to visit your gravesite, that the people who own the graveyard, the cemetery, they have to move the graves because people won't stop coming because they believe something that's probably most likely a myth just because it's creepy. Anyways, you guys, that's it for this time. If you'd like to see more from me, please like, comment, and subscribe. I appreciate every single one of you. Happy Hallows Eve to you all. Goodbye.